Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Charting the Path to Product Mastery, hosted by us in Distilled. So here at Distilled, our mission is quite simple. It is to make working life better. And the way we're doing this is by providing impactful trainings, workshops, leadership development programs, and coaching of groups and individuals, as well as free stuff like in-depth articles and sessions like the one we're having here today. And so if you're curious about us and you want to learn more about us, please visit distilled.no. But now, without further ado, I will hand the floor over to David and Jit.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Siri. Lovely to see so many people on the webinar. Nice to see some familiar faces and definitely some familiar names. So today we'll be talking about the competency framework that David and I have created towards the end of last year and earlier this year. Before we get into that, some introductions. I know some of you know us, but many of you probably don't. So I'll start off and then I'll hand over to David, and then we'll get right into it. We'll get into the competency framework. So I'm Jit, or Jitin, as the full name is. I'm a coach and trainer and consultant, and have been in the transformation space for the last 10 to 15 years, I'd say. Focus has been on modernizing places of work to make working lives better, as Siri said as well. Large organizations, small organizations, fashion to finance, government to charity, lots and lots of different sectors. What's been the common theme across all of those sectors is how do we keep up with the current trends? First, it was digital transformation, then it was agile transformation, and more recently has been how do we become a product-led organization? Jit, please tell us how to do that. And so that has led us to a lot of the work that David and I have been doing recently, and has culminated in not only the recent training courses, but also this competency framework that we're going to be delving into a little bit today. David, do you want to give a little bit about yourself?
Thank you very much. Apologies for my bit of a sniffle. I've got a bit of a cold here as the spring and summer are heading our way. So very much similar to Jit, same kind of places. In fact, some of the time we've even worked together, which was the highlight of his working career. I started in product is actually where I came from. So I was a subject matter expert in a finance company, and throughout working with various organizations, it became very clear that although lots of other parts of the business are getting attention and help and coaching and mentoring and training, etc., product was missing out. For some reason, people weren't getting a lot of support around product. And so this is why this focus has been put on to helping people in the product management space in the last, as Jit said, 12 months or so. So I look forward to seeing what you think about this and what input you've got and where it sits for you.
Thank you very much, David. Right. So before we delve into the competency framework, we're going to get your get you contributing a little bit as well. So what we'd like you to do is head over to the chat and think about whatever role that you play in your organizations, whether that's a product manager, something else in product, or a completely different role. It's all okay. What we want you to put in the chat is your biggest strengths, and that could be anything. So in the chat, write down what you believe your biggest strength is in your role. Probably your role at work rather than your role at home. So cooking may be one strength at home, but we're looking for more work-related things. And we'll see what emerges. Bringing humor to a situation.
I thought I'd start us off.
Thank you. Feel free others to join in as well. Facilitation. Love it. Communicating well. Getting teams to work better together. Love it. people focus, holistic view of the organization. Again, a holistic view, user-oriented design, and strategic and operational focus, team dynamics, facilitation, curiosity, courage and creativity, love it.
You're
People.
allowing that, are you, Jip? I mean,
Pardon?
you said what one thing, and there's an and in there. You
Yeah,
let it go, are
and's
you?
okay. And's okay.
You're
It's
you're
nearly,
so so
it's nearly,
flexible.
yeah, it's nearly Easter break, David. It's all good. Co-working with the team. So lots of people focused stuff there. Keep it coming as we carry on. That's all good. Some interesting kind of themes to pick up on and how that might relate to product management. So a lot of people related stuff, getting teams to work well together. There's some stuff around structure. There's some stuff around how do we communicate, especially across many teams. If we're working across many teams, there was some stuff around holistic view of the situation. And then there was some linked thoughts around strategy. So I guess those are all interesting in the product space. And the most recent one, finding a couple of most recent ones, psychological safety and finding purpose. And so that could be purpose in our role, but also purpose for our organizations and the work that we're doing, and maybe even the product that we're working on the system that we're working on, all really crucial considerations for product management, and quite closely linked to the competency framework that we have created. And hopefully, as we go through some of the competency framework, you'll be able to see where some of your strengths that you've articulated there map across well, and where there might be some areas to further strengthen some of your skills. So the question that might be being asked is competency framework, and why put one together in the first place? So David and I have worked with, had the lucky opportunity to actually work with lots of really cool and experienced product leaders over our time, as well as general leaders who are trying to transform the organization. And we've gained vast knowledge and experience over the decade or so that we've been working in this arena. What we've noticed, especially recently, is that there's been some confusion. Of course, there have been authorities out there such as Marty Kagan, Melissa Perry, who've all talked about the product operating model. How do we make our organizations more product oriented? And a variety of product related roles have sprung up over the last 5 or so years. And we've noticed that there's some experience, some confusion around what some of the roles are there to do. What's the difference between product owner and the product manager? How does one work with the other? How does the product manager fit in? What's the difference between an associate product manager and a product manager? How does that all work with the director of product and the chief product officer? Lots and lots of things. How do we focus on delivery but also strategy at the same time? And if you're new into this space and you're looking to grow your career, you might be feeling overwhelmed. Where do I go next? And so the competency framework that we put together is designed to help as a thought partner to yourselves. It's designed to help you think about where you might be within your product management journey, where you might want to go, but also from the organization's perspective, it can help clarify things too. It might help with what we might choose to do with our hiring strategy, how we might develop our workforce some more, and helps to bring some clarity to the situation. We've had really good experience with other competency frameworks. A lot of you may be familiar with the Agile Coaching Competency Framework, developed by Michael Spade and Lisa Adkins. That's been used for many years to help Agile coaches, Scrum Masters, delivery managers, and other professionals in the Agile space develop, because they brought clarity and a common language to what the role entails. And we've endeavored to do the same. Now, we're not the first people to do that. I've also mentioned Marty Kagan, already Melissa Perry, as some of the biggest authorities out in the industry. We know that there are others who have put together competency frameworks in the product space, and some are really, really good. What we noticed was that in some of the previous competency frameworks, there was a slight imbalance. Some of them were focused too much towards delivery, some of them were focused too much towards leadership, in our opinion, of course. Some were maybe focused too much towards strategy. And so we've endeavored to create a more of a balanced framework. So we've come up with one. It's made up of 4 different domains and 14 different competencies. And we'll briefly go into them right now. The first domain is customer and market insight. I'm just reading off the list here so I don't get them wrong. The second one is evidence mindset. The third one is strategy and execution. And the fourth one is, bear with me a second.
Inspiring others.
Inspiring others. Thank you very much, David. Inspiring others. So what we're going to do today is start from the top and work through competency by competency, giving a bit of a description of what each one is, and then allowing you all to have a bit of a think about where you might be in that relating to that competency. And then we'll have a short discussion on each. Just to set expectations, there are 14 competencies, and we have about 30 minutes left on the webinar. So we're unlikely to get through all 14 in a huge amount of detail, but we endeavor to give you a high-level overview of many of them as possible. David, anything you want to add?
No, I'm excited to get going, Jit.
Cool, why don't we then? Let's head over and explore the first competency.
And I'm assuming that you would like me to start with that one.
Please.
Okay. So the first one, well, the first domain is as Jit said, is the customer and market insight. So this is focusing on the product manager's ability to understand customer needs, market dynamics, competitive landscapes. So mastery in this area overall ensures that products resonate with customers and are well positioned in the market. Okay, so the first single competency, number 1, is the deep knowledge of the customer. I suspect that few are surprised that we've put this as number 1, knowing that we love focusing on customers. So deep knowledge of the customer, effective product management requires the ability to be able to empathize with customers, understand pain points, their desires, their expectations, etc. So these insights can then be used to create meaningful and valuable experiences that address real customer needs. So on each of the competencies, we've got a scale of 1 to 5. I'm going to put up a Slido in a minute to get you to anonymously give us some feedback. At one end, at number 1, we've got the foundational. In the middle, we've got the growth areas. And then at the far end, we've got mastery, so number 5. And we'd like you to decide, where are you in terms of this scale? So for this deep knowledge of the customer, I'm going to read out the definition of each of those 3 levels, and then you can decide where we are. What we haven't done yet, of course, is put a 0, because people might go, I've got no knowledge at all about this. In which case, you'll just have to put a 1, because we didn't think about putting a 0 on the Slido. I may be able to change that for future ones. So deep knowledge of the customer, getting knowledge about the customer, what they want, what they don't want, what they need, etc. So at the foundational level, product manager learns about basic customer needs and pain points, often through the guidance from others. As they grow, they will actively gather customer feedback, identify customer pain points in more depth, and use research to influence decisions. Reaching mastery includes developing these skills further and championing customer empathy across teams, driving customer-centric product decisions, and uncovering both obvious and latent customer needs. So in terms of your deep knowledge of the customer, I'd like you to think where you are. Now, I've just shared in the chat the Slido. For those of you who are watching on a recording, you're going to have to, well, play along, but you can't click on the Slido. Okay.
David, just a couple of questions in the chat about we can't see the slides, and we're not presenting any at the moment. We're just talking through, and then please head over to the Slido where you'll see the competencies there.
Maybe I should share the screen because otherwise the recording is pretty
Let's do that, David.
poor as well. So I shall find that in a moment, and I shall do that. Okay. I believe you can now see the results on here. I think on the one where you're voting, you should be able to see a description of what we're talking about. So, well, so far it seems like people have got at least some knowledge of the knowledge or the need of the customers. So I'm very happy by this because lots of places I'm sure that we've all seen or heard about say they're focusing on the customer but aren't. What they're really doing is focusing on the leadership who say they know the customer but don't actually know the customer. So my heart is being warmed by the fact that a lot of people are saying that there's at least some being done.
I echo that, David. It's really, really great to see. I think the common challenges, which are described in more depth in the framework itself, and we've sent some material out afterwards, Siri will for sure, is the continuous need to continue to understand the customer. I think for new products, from what we've seen, it can be pretty cool. We go out and find out what the customer needs, but then what happens? As the product matures, as it scales through the product life cycle, how do we ensure that we're keeping in touch with what the customer needs? And how do we use that, especially as the product scales and the organization scales, how do we use those insights to help us dictate what our strategy is? And how do we use those insights to help us to prioritize? How do we use those insights to balance the customer needs and the business value that we're looking to drive? And therefore, how do we find that sweet spot? But great to see.
Okay, you going to move on to the next one?
Yeah, why not? So next one in the domain of customer market insight is deep knowledge of the market and industry. And I'll read it out. It says, a strong grasp of the broader industry landscape, including market trends, competitive moves, and regulatory factors. Product managers leverage the knowledge to position their products effectively and anticipate shifts in the industry. So the first one was about knowing the customer. This one is about knowing the market in which your product is either going into or is in right now, and the competitive landscape as well. And so foundational competency is understand the basics of the industry, the key players, and the market trends. The intermediate stage, or the growth stage as we called it, the product manager or the product management function tracks market trends, identifies opportunities, analyzes competitors, and makes informed product decisions based off of all of that. And then mastery is anticipates market shifts, identifies emerging trends, and uses deep industry knowledge to steer the product strategy. So the shift at the mastery level is how does that influence strategy, not only for the product, but perhaps the organization as well. David, why don't you bring up the Slido?
People have been keen getting in that voting already, Jim.
Fantastic.
Ooh, okay. A bit more mixed.
more of a split this time around. I think this echoes what we see at some of our clients as well, where maybe we know our immediate competitors, and maybe we understand what the table stakes are for being in the market and how we might compete with those people who are playing directly in our space. But this is heading towards mastery, is how do we anticipate what the future might hold? How do we maybe influence what the future might hold? And therefore, how does that impact our strategy? Can often be really, really challenging. And so it's useful to delve into not only what our competitors are doing, but also the factors that influence our business and the business ecosystem around our organization. Our organization doesn't operate in a bubble. There are lots and lots of things around it that have an impact of it. And knowing what those things are always really, really useful. David, anything you want to add?
No, I'm good. I'm really excited to get onto the next one, Jit, because
Go
you
for it.
know what I am like about evidence.
Go for it. Let's see.
Okay. So the next category, in fact, well, the next domain is about evidence and the evidence mindset. So we're not talking hard quants necessarily, right? We can have subjective, qualitative data as well, but it's all about using data to inform our approach. So where can we, as product managers, leverage data and then use that to experiment and think critically in order to guide our decisions going forwards? So we've referred to the scientific mindset. So this is about saying, I think this will happen in this situation, setting an experiment and moving forward. So the first one of the first competency in domain B of the evidence mindset is about the scientific approach. So it is encouraging product management to think more like scientists. So have that curiosity, the experimentation, and open to learning. Okay, so rather than saying, this is what we think will happen and just going and doing it and shoving something out there for our customers, actually finding out whether or not our assumptions are correct. So we are testing those. Right? We're testing our assumptions, our opinions, we're forming hypotheses, and we're running experiments to see what evidence we get to validate or correct our ideas. And then we can improve our outcomes based on that. So the foundational level of this is that product managers begin by learning the basics of experimentation and hypothesis framing, often participating in tests led by others. As they develop, they begin to design and run their own experiments, gather insights, make informed decisions based on results. And at the mastery level, they're embedding experimentation into the team culture. So we're coaching others in that evidence-based thinking and fostering a mindset of curiosity and continuous improvement across the organization. So let's move on to get you to be able to vote on that. Are you in the foundational level? Are you in the development or in the mastery?
What the scores on the doors, Mr. Lowe?
I'm just trying to find my share. I've got too many things open here. Here we go. Share screen. The scores. Here are the scores. Quite a lot of confidence. People are already doing this. About 5 years ago, I asked a similar question, and it was definitely further in the ones and twos, that people were not creating experiments, or creating experiments that maybe would always churn out the same results that they actually wanted. But this is, again, uplifting in that people are setting these.
I think there's in organizations, the language is starting to become more normalized as well. And senior leaders are probably a bit less afraid than what they used to be when it comes to experimentation. And I think there's a growing acknowledgement that it's hard to be deterministic, especially when you're operating in markets that are highly changeable, or industries that are highly changeable, and therefore knowing exactly what to create in your products is really, really difficult. And so we're going to need a level of experimentation for us to understand whether we are actually meeting our customers' needs or not. But it's great to see.
Well, and the beauty of experimentation is, of course, in the name, right? If we go into this and we're talking in the organization about experimenting, everybody associates experiments with things not necessarily being proven to be A or B, right? It's an experiment. We're testing something, we're finding out, we're learning from it. It just goes with all of that MVP, the startup, all of that mindset in terms of we are experimenting. We're not just validating what we already know. Right? Let's find out something new so that we can make it something much better for our customers.
Should we move on to the next one, David?
I think we should.
And actually, quite a nice segue. Scientific method, scientific approach, experimentation. We can only really run good experiments if we understand the impact of those experiments and understand whether anything has changed or not. And a good way of understanding whether something has changed is having some kind of data. And this is a fairly obvious one, and it was common across lots of the other competency frameworks that we've seen out there, or certainly in the literature as well. And that is deep knowledge of the data. And without data, product management is really, really difficult. And so the competency says proficiency in gathering, interpreting, and applying data insights to inform product decisions. Product managers with deep data knowledge identify trends, measure product performance, and adjust strategies based on data-driven evidence. It's all about actionable data, and the need is for, if we're taking this scientific approach, to be able to use that data to be able to not only come up with the right experiments, but to ask the right questions in the first place. The data really helps us to do that. At the foundational level, product managers have a basic understanding of product metrics and use tools to help them to do that. At the growth stage, they're able to analyze data trends, measure product performance over time, and draw insights to be able to make good product decisions. And at mastery, this is done by default. And its data is leveraged for decision making at all levels. It's used to validate hypotheses, and it's used to drive meaningful impact and changes at the strategy level. So let's see where you believe you are all at. Like bang in the middle, more or less. The biggest challenge that David and I see in organizations when it comes to data these days is that there is actually so much of it. It's much more readily available. There's some great tools out there that's able to capture lots and lots of things, especially in terms of our customers' interactions with our products. And so which ones do we focus on? And it's a really, really good question, but maybe a tricky one to come up with the answer for straight away. But really, there needs to be a huge link to what our strategy is, not only just as an organization, but at product level. There's maybe a sneak peek ahead at some of the other competencies that are coming up.
I agree totally with the data thing, and again, this brings in all of those things of what are the metrics that we're getting data on, and vanity metrics, etc., etc. I have a story that I always think of when we start talking about data. I won't name the organisation. It was a good 15 years ago where I was, and there was a revamp of their website, and the front page originally. Sorry to put this image in your head, but it basically looked like someone had thrown up all over the homepage. Everything was on it, right? Everything you could think of out for this organisation was on there. And there was a redesign, and people were spending less time on the homepage. And the data, along with not just that data of how long people were spending on the homepage, but with other things as well, insinuated or appeared to show that they were finding what it was that they were looking for originally. However, the management team came back and said, well, this is a disaster because people aren't spending time looking at all of the things that are on that were on the homepage. So they're not spending as much time looking at the information. Data can often, in the wrong hands, prove anything you want. So asking for the right stuff as well as being able to interpret it is key in this one, right? Shall we move on?
Yes, let's do it.
Okay. So our next one and final one in the evidence mindset is based on all of the data that you've got about critical thinking. So product management, you've got all of this data. You've also got a lot of demands coming from all over the place, right? So we've got this competing priorities. We've got to have difficult discussions. We've got to have trade-offs. We've got ambiguity about necessarily what will achieve what, because this is why we're doing experimentation. So critical thinking enables product managers to navigate the challenges of ambiguity, competing priorities, difficult trade-offs with structured reasoning and objectivity. So here we go. At the foundational level, product managers learn to break down problems logically and consider multiple inputs before deciding. In the growth area, becoming more skilled at spotting biases, identifying the right problems to solve, and articulating their thinking clearly. And at the mastery level, they foster critical thinking in others, challenging assumptions, asking the right questions, and guiding teams to better outcomes through thoughtful analysis. So here we go. This is for you to decide, where are you in this? Critical thinking, there we go. And I shall share it. Problem is, surely on this one, if you're not thinking critically, so you're really a 1, you're going to think you're a 5, maybe. But well, we'll see what you're voted on. Right, let me share. Oh, people are confident in this one. So I think the interesting thing in this growth part here is where you're starting to spot biases, both your own, your teams maybe, and leaderships or management. Whereas it's very, as per my previous story of the company with the homepage, we can try to show things that we want to be there rather than necessarily that we are finding out. So with all of these evidence mindset, there is an element, an overarching element of all of them, in that we've got to have that curiosity, a genuine curiosity, rather than the feeling that all of these experiments are proving us correct or proving somebody correct. It goes very much with coaching, in that if we have that true curiosity, then we're going to find out more than we will if we have this faux curiosity or trying to prove ourselves correct. However, I know it's very tempting, because in the end, sometimes we've nailed our colours to the mast, if that's the phrase, and therefore then the experiment is showing whether or not we're correct. Better to actually find out something valuable and be wrong, I would say, than to prove that we're correct because we're twisting stuff. Anything you'd like to add, Jit, before we move on? I feel that we're getting through these quite well, but at some
Yeah,
point might
just
have to
one.
stop and talk about something else.
Yeah, just one thing to add on this one. One of the key reasons why we added it was the confusion between the different roles that you might see in an organization: product manager, product owner, project manager, just to name a few. There's the delivery manager role there in some situations too, as well as some others. And what we've noticed is in some situations where there's all of those roles at play and some kind of hierarchy at play as well, there people sometimes operating at execution level. Maybe that's more likely, more often than not, product owner role as described by the Scrum framework. Maybe there can be in some situations a lack of critical thinking, where maybe they're seen as the order taker and where maybe they're seen as the person just to build the features, and we end up falling into that build trap. We're building and building and building and building, but what are we actually building towards? And so that's one of the reasons why we included this one in there, because even at all levels where there are those multiple roles at play and a hierarchy at play, it's really, really important at all levels to display critical thinking so that we don't get snared into that build trap. Just doing a quick time check, David. I think we're about 8 minutes to the end. So why don't we try and get through a couple more competencies and then open up to a couple of questions, and then we'll start to wrap up.
Okay.
I saw something in the chat about it being difficult to follow the foundation to mastery description. So we'll go a little bit slower, but yes, we'll be sending stuff out towards the end as well, after the webinar. So, is it me, David?
It is.
So we're on to domain C, strategy and execution, and I think it says what it is on the tin. It's about how we have a strategic focus, and then how do we bridge the gap between strategy and execution to ensure that there is that common thread. And the first of the competencies is inspired by Marty Kagan, and it's deep knowledge of the business. And the description is a deep understanding of the company's business model, objectives, and drivers. And we use this knowledge to understand how the product fits into the business's broader goals, the constraints of the business, and the targets that the business has, as well as any constraints that the business might have, such as regulatory constraints. So foundation for deep knowledge of the business is learns about the company's business model, core products, and revenue streams. Growth, or the intermediate level, is connects product decisions to business objectives, understand how the product impacts the organization's value. And mastery is there's a deep understanding of the competing forces, the market and the shifts in the market, and how the product aligns with the organization's mission and initiatives and outcomes. Strong scores there so far. Cool to see that there's some strong scores here. Most recent client that I'm working with, I think if we'd asked the question of them, their scores would be much lower. They are very much falling into just building the product just for the product's sake. There is low connectivity to actually what the business drivers are. and what really the focus of the organization is and needs to be. And so they're at the moment not performing very well in the market. And knowing their customers is one thing that they should improve upon, but the other thing is how do they connect that and to ensure that there's a sweet spot between what the customer needs and what the business also needs and what drives the business. Let's do one more quick one, David. So let's go on to the competency number 7, and then let's grab 1 or 2 questions.
Okay. My dog has just come back from his walk and he's going crazy all over me. So I might have to let you do this, Jed, if you're okay, to pick up the product strategy as well. I'm going to try and tame
Never
that.
work with children and animals is what they say, right?
I know. Well, the children, because they were on holiday, took him out for a walk, but took the wrong house keys. So it's all gone off here. So
Okay, cool.
there we go.
So number 7, really quickly, is about product strategy. It's a really, really critical one. And in the 2-day training course that we run, the product strategy element forms a huge part of it. And there's going to also be a follow-up masterclass on product strategy coming in the autumn or fall, if you like. And it's a really, really big topic area. And so it's a critical competency. And so the description is the ability to formulate a clear product vision and roadmap that aligns with both business goals and customer needs. That sweet spot there again. Skilled product managers craft strategies that guide product development and ensure long-term value. The foundation is participates in strategy discussions, learns and helps to define the product vision. And we'll go straight to mastery just for time. Mastery aligns product strategy with organizational goals, understands the need to balance short and long-term value, and influences broader business strategy and decisions. So not only just thinking about the product and its strategy, but the organization as a whole. We'll do this one and then we'll pause there. And once you've voted, what we'd love for you to do is in the chat, and it can be the competencies that we've gone through already, but it might be some others that you are thinking of too. In the chat, if you would like to, note down where you think your biggest improvement area lies.
Maybe I'll share the overview of the competencies, shall I, Jim?
Go for it. That strategy one is a big topic. I noticed that the scores were on more towards the lower end. So maybe some insights there into where some improvement areas might need to be. But yeah, in the chat, write down where you think your biggest improvement area lies. And maybe there's some questions that you have too. I think we're about to run out of time. Apologies for that. If you do have any questions, do pop them in the chat. If we can answer them in the minute that we have available, we will do so.
What a whirlwind, Jay. It's been a whirlwind, but thank you for joining us. We should not keep you longer than we said we would.
Yeah, and enjoy your Easter breaks at the end of this week.